Welcome to the Horse Racing Network with me, Izzy Phillips, and I'm joined by Paul Auster, racing journalist and broadcaster. And Paul, the action comes thick and fast on day one of Aintree's Grand National Festival. It actually kicks off with 4 back-to-back Grade 1 races. But how are you? How are you feeling heading into Aintree?
I'm very well. I'd like to be backing a few more winners than I have been of late. I've got to be honest, they've been a bit hard to come by through the month of March, I should say. January wasn't brilliant either, but March. I think a lot of people have struggled through March because Cheltenham was really tough, but we're always going onwards and upwards, and it does look to be a terrific 3 days at Aintree, and the opener, as you say, looks a cracker.
Right. Shall we dive straight in then? We start off with the Manifesto Novices Chase. The markets are shaping up with some interesting runners here, Paul, because we've got the likes of Gidley Park, who obviously we didn't see during the Cheltenham Festival due to a setback. We've also got Django Bay in this race, fresh out of that surprise late flying finish in the Arkle. So a couple of interesting runners. Who do you like the look of?
Well, I've got to be honest. I think Django Bai is a good favourite. I'm not normally a favourite backer, as you know, Izzy, but everything about his run at Cheltenham in the Arkle suggested that he really is a 2.5 miler. And so I think the extra half mile is going to suit him. Question we don't know really is quite how much that race took out of him, but I think he's likely to go very well on a fairly similar ground, maybe even a touch quicker. We'll have to see. Your Gidley Park is an interesting shout, actually, because, of course, he beat Caldwell Potter at Windsor last time out, and that form has worked out well. So he could be a very interesting shout as a relatively fresh horse. And if handstands were to go for this race, he'd obviously be interesting as well for Ben Pauling.
I mean, I really like the look of Gidley Park here personally. Obviously, I know he's run over further before. I think that last run out where he beat Caldwell Potter last time at Windsor was actually over 2 miles. So he's kind of stepping up in trip a little bit from that, but he has run over further than that previously. So he's a horse I know a lot of people were quite excited about for the Cheltenham Festival. And I think that he could stand a pretty good chance to win this on the opener of the Aintree Festival. Right, let's bounce straight in though to the next race. But before we do, Paul, I know that you always keep an eye on the weather forecast. I don't know if you've had a chance to see what it is for Aintree these coming few days, but actually it looks like there isn't really going to be much rain at all. Generally quite nice spring temperatures. We mentioned on our Cheltenham review that the ground and the conditions may have caught out a few of those market leaders that were favourites for their races because they'd been used to running in what was perhaps a little bit of a wet autumn. It doesn't look like we're going to have really any rain here on the lead up to the Grand National, and I'm sure that the course will be monitoring that and wanting to water a little bit as well. But generally you're going to get good going. Do you think that's going to play a big feature on some of these favourites based on their last runs?
I think that this time, I think the trainers are ready for the ground, because for quite a while there hasn't been much rain. So the horses that are going to Aintree now are horses that are going to handle a decent surface. Now, it is going to be quicker, I think, than Cheltenham. And of course, it's a sharper track, Aintree, as well. So it might just help those horses with a little bit more speed. And from what I can see from the weather, it's going to be great for people going to the races at Aintree, which is a fabulous track to attend. And of course, Ladies' Day, half of Merseyside will be out there having lots of fun and the odd drink or two along the way. So I think as long as the skies stay fair, as is forecast, I think it's going to be a fabulous weekend. It'll look great on telly and it'll be great to be there as well.
Yes, the ladies of Liverpool always turn themselves out incredibly well for Ladies' Day. So on that vein, the next race is the Boodles Anniversary Juvenile Hurdle. I'm sure that there may be a lot of ladies in beautiful jewellery, potentially even some Boodles jewellery around the track. But in this race, we've got Lou Lamba currently leading the market. Obviously, we been told by James Owen that we won't be seeing any more of East India Dock this season, so no rematch there, and no Poneros to come and spoil the party either at 100 to 1, Paul. It looks to me like Nicky Henderson, after perhaps the disappointment of Cheltenham, I know he's a trainer that always puts the well-being of his horses first, and I'm not saying that that's wrong or that that doesn't lead his decision making, but certainly over the past few years, I think maybe many a racing fan has felt that Nicky Henderson has become a little conservative in places with the placing of his horses. I think after obviously the last couple of years with the festival where his horses perhaps weren't very well. Now this year they were all lining up, but it was very disappointing for him. I feel he's coming out big guns for this Aintree Festival that we perhaps wouldn't have seen, I would argue, if his horses would have won at Cheltenham. I think that would have been maybe the pressure off for him a little bit, but I feel now he's come out, he's seen what's happened with the likes of Golden Ace and Jeremy Scott, and pretty bullish here. I mean, we just mentioned we've got Django Bay in the 145, we've got Lou Lamber here, and many more of his runners to speak about. What do you think of the chances of Lou Lamber, though? I've got to be honest, on good ground, after you look at his last race at Cheltenham, I think he's got an excellent chance to go and take this.
Yeah, I mean, he's a strong favourite, and I think he's about even money. Even just under what 4 or 5 days, whatever it is, before the race, they were going even money. Now, of course, horses are able to turn around and run races in shorter periods of time when they're racing on a decent ground. It's the soft, heavy ground that really drags the energy out of them. So that's another reason I think why Nicky Henderson and a number of other trainers are going to be prepared to roll the dice with horses that have had pretty tough races at Cheltenham. And Lou Lamber had a pretty tough race when he was caught by Poneros. And in the same race, Lady Vega Allen, who was fourth, and Hello Neighbour, who was sixth, are possibly going to reoppose. And there wasn't that much really between the first half dozen home. I'm just wondering whether that form might not be quite as hot as it appeared, because they did finish in a bit of a heap. Nothing was an outstanding winner. And there's a horse in the race that I think has got a chance at a double figure prize, and that's Joseph O'Brien's Put Your Hands Together. Now, he won at the Cheltenham Festival, of course. He won in the Grade 3, the Fred Winter. He won it by 6 lengths, and of course it's a handicap, but he's gone up now to a mark of 143, suggesting that he's only a few pounds behind the Lamber now, and some way ahead of Lady Vega Allen, who's only a third of the price. So in JP McManus's colours, if he does take his chance, I'd be inclined to be betting Put Your Hands Together each way, rather than taking a chance on Lou Lamber at even money. But Lou Lamber, certainly, on the Cheltenham form, is the horse to beat.
I really like that take, Paul. I think that's really interesting. I've got to be honest, I agree with you in the sense as well of Joseph O'Brien. I think that I mentioned it to you during the Cheltenham preview. I always find that he actually gets them primed almost perfectly for Aintree, so I wouldn't disagree with that take at all. Right, we're moving on then. We've got the Aintree Bowl next. So it's a field really, I would say, full of potential. Obviously, we've got Grey Dawning in here after this became his target and he never ran at the Cheltenham Festival. He's been kept for this by the Skeltons. We've also got Ahoy Signor, who, Paul, I've got to be honest with you, I felt was running a very good race in that Gold Cup before, unfortunately, coming down. And he is in for the Lucinda Russell team, who are in flying form at the moment, so he could be quite dangerous here. And we've also got Stage Star, who's been kept for Aintree as well by Paul Nicholls. So I think that the Aintree Bowl usually is, but I think definitely is this year, one of the best races on the cards. What's your take on this? I'm leaning towards Grey Dawning, but what about you?
Well, I think it's going to be a very good race. I hope it's not going to cut up. We want to see a decent sized field, and Grey Dawning certainly arriving as a fresh horse following his really good win at Kelso, where he beat Iroko, who of course is a very useful horse in his own right. And of course he was second in the Betfair Chase in testing ground behind Royal Pagaille earlier in the season. So I can definitely see a very strong case for him. The Irish horse Spillan's Tower, if he were to take his chance, he'd be a very interesting runner. Remember, he was only beaten half a length by Factor File at Punchestown in November, and Factor File has come out and absolutely bolted up in the Ryanair at Cheltenham. And I don't think Spillan's Tower really did himself justice at Kempton on Boxing Day. Probably the track didn't suit him. But I'm with you. I'm interested that you picked up as well on a Hoy Senior, because old John McCrick, who I knew pretty well back in the day, used to always talk about horses for courses, you see. And this is one horse that loves this course. You know, he's won 2 Grade 1s at Aintree. He's been second in 2 more. He's been second in this race in the past. And he runs this track quite a few pounds better than anywhere else. And as you've already pointed out, I thought as well he was moving really well at Cheltenham until he made that blunder and came down. Now, poor old Derek Fox probably isn't going to be able to ride. I'm not quite sure how he's doing at the moment, but whoever it is, it's going to be a good rider. Maybe Patrick Wadge, who's a cracking young jockey. And Ahoy Senor, around the 7-1 mark, he could give them all something to think about, and he might be the biggest danger to Grey Dawning in my book.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a real show of jumping in that Aintree Bowl, certainly. And another one where I think all eyes will be on the jumping pool will be the Aintree Hurdle, where we've got the re-emergence of none other than Constitution Hill as he returns to action. There was obviously a massive amount of disappointment around his Cheltenham Festival run in the Champion Hurdle, where he unfortunately came to grief. He is returning and is returning against 2 hot mares in the likes of Lossiemouth and Brighter Days Ahead, who still currently hold entries. Now, Brighter Days Ahead, I felt personally, Paul, did not give her showing at the Cheltenham Festival. In fact, she fell away quite easily. And then obviously, as we all know, the race fell to State Man and then eventually to Golden Ace. So it really was all eyes on the jumping. And I think we're going to get the same here. However, this is over 2 mile 4, Paul, and Lossiemouth loves 2 mile 4. I've got to say, I think that she looks a lot better based on that mare's hurdle run than when we saw her against Constitution Hill at Kempton on Boxing Day, which I think really perhaps she just wasn't quite fully fit, wasn't quite 100% is what that looked like to me, because she didn't look like the Lossiemouth of old, and she didn't finish miles away. So over and maybe an unpreferred distance, I think she could throw an upset here. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think I'd take you on with this one because I think Constitution Hill will win if he stands up. I really do. Remember, he won it last year. He beat Sharjah, who's a horse who placed in 3 champion hurdles previously and was very talented. And of course, he's never been beaten when he has stood up. And Lossiemouth, well, I mean, what a clanger they dropped, didn't they, really, by not running her in the champion hurdle? They're going to regret that all their lives, really. Okay, they got the Cheltenham win, but she was absolutely brilliant against the mares. The other point as well, Brighter Days Ahead, Gordon Elliott did report that she, I can't remember if she was sick or she picked up a slight injury during the race. So she clearly didn't run her race at Cheltenham. And I think it's going to be an absolute, if all 3 turn up, it's going to be an absolute crackerjack of a race. And but I can't see Constitution Hill being beat, to be honest, if he stands up. So although I wouldn't be betting the odds on, it's a race that I would be watching rather than getting involved in financially. I'd like to see him win and win well, and put the argument to bed about who's best of the 3 biggies in this race.
Absolutely. It would be so exciting as well, because obviously initially everyone was quite disappointed to think that he was going for this race instead of the race at Punchestown, which is what Nicky Henderson had teed up, shortly after his loss at the festival. And actually, it sounds like he's going to both. So I think it's all eyes on Constitution Hill here. But we've discussed obviously the first 4 grade ones on the card, Paul. Is there any other races or any other horses you've got your eye on? I know you like a big price out there. Anyone on your shortlist?
Well, yes, of course, we haven't got the final declaration, so it's a speculative suggestion that the 440 race on day one is the Red Rum handicap chase, named after the greatest Grand National horse of all that was trained locally by Ginger McCain. And there's a horse of Henry de Bromhead's called the Folkes Tiara. The Folkes Tiara, and I believe that he has got everything going for him in this race. So if he does show up for it, it'll be a fair price at the Folkes Tiara, and that would be my handicap bet in the handicap chase, the Red Rum at 440 on Thursday.
Lovely. I love it. Well, as you know, you can get all of Paul's selections over on his channel. But thank you for tuning in. That is all we've got time for on our day one Aintree Festival. Keep up to date with the Horse Racing Network. Don't forget to go and like and subscribe.